Good evening. How many of you ever thought when you were kids that you wanted to be a superhero? I know when I was little, I'm looking at my sister, she wants to have a Wonder Woman party this year. But I used to think it would be really cool to have some superpowers, right? To be able to fly, to be able to be super fast like the Flash, or maybe to have some invisibility. But here's the thing. I have been invisible pretty much my whole life. Most people, what they see is this shell, like the genetic shell that came into this world by birth with, just because I had a gorgeous mama and this is just the gene pool. But very few people have ever actually taken the time to get to know me. And that can be very discouraging when you're a girl with big dreams and no means who feels like her voice should be heard. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my story, and I'm going to tell you right now, it's a bit of a tearjerker, so get ready. But I thought that it was very important to bring this message to you for several reasons. So I'll give you a little bit of background. My name is actually Elizabeth Alejandra Juan. Nobody can say it or pronounce it, so everybody calls me Alex, which is totally fine. My parents are from Guatemala. They both came here. They lived like 5 miles apart, but never met each other until they went to Chicago. And lucky for us, them being brave and wanting and believing in the American dream and the idea that they could build this better life for themselves brought them here. And because of them, my siblings and I were able to do things that people take for granted so much sometimes. We were able to choose who our partners were going to be in life, what goals we wanted to have, what education levels we wanted to reach, what jobs we were going to hold. And it was my mother's determination and the fact that she raised two very independent thinkers, and that is the reason that I get to stand here before you, because of her sacrifices. And I know that the culture shock was incredibly difficult for her. And so growing up, she made us go to school 1 year in the United States and 1 year in Guatemala. Sounds very exotic. We didn't have an accent. She was very big on us enunciating, so nobody would pick on us. And as cool as that was, and it does keep you humble, it's also very confusing as a kid because you never really feel like you fit in anywhere. So what I ended up doing, because when I was here, I wasn't quite white enough for my friends in the US, and I wasn't quite Spanish enough for my friends in Guatemala. So I became a chameleon. And that's how I got my power of invisibility. Because really, what people were seeing were the different masks that I was wearing. And it grew up that way the whole time because my friends thought, oh my gosh, she gets to travel all the time. She's here 1 year, she's abroad the other year. But what nobody realized was that the people raising us, regardless of which country we were living in, had some very tough demons that they were trying to conquer in the form of alcoholism and drug abuse. And so my childhood was very, very difficult, and I really kind of felt like I was a nobody. I didn't really matter to anyone because I was just the punching bag for my parents and for all the kids at school who thought that a scrawny kid made a great target. And what ended up happening in high school, I met this amazing man, kind of what the mayor was saying about how mentors change lives. His name was Chief Anthony Arcuri. And he's the first person that sat me down and said, you know what, Alex, I see potential in you. He's like, when you think about the future, what do you see yourself becoming? And I thought about it because nobody had actually asked me the question, because up until that point, I was just a victim of the circumstances that I had grown up in. And I told him, I want to be one of the good guys. And he sat me down and he looked at me and he said, Alex, you already are. And it wasn't until then that I really considered the fact that when nobody expects anything from you, the possibilities are endless. You get to write your own story. So of course, I ended up graduating with honors. I was president of every club, and I joined the United States Air Force. And by that time, I had found my voice. And when they wanted me to conform to some female roles, I fought it, right? I drove myself into a male-dominated field, and I became one of the first women to become a member of a security forces squadron. and I was determined to kick ass, right? So I worked 10 times harder than everybody else, and I jumped, and I made sure that I knew how to, handle my weapon, and I would carry my own rucksack, even though the weight of it would pull me back when I jump out of a deuce and a half, and I'd end up looking like a turtle sometimes. But it was cool, because I was going to show them that they were never going to have to carry extra weight because of me. And I think after time, they were able to respect that in me and accept me as one of their own in their ranks. Now, I would have gladly given my life for any one of them. So you'll imagine my heartbreak when one of them violated me in a way that still haunts me today. And on that night, he actually stole my sense of safety and self-worth. We call it military sexual trauma, and my trauma happened a long time ago, and I really do appreciate how much we've evolved as a society and the fact that we're doing so much work in talking about it. But here's the deal. We still need to do better. We need to do a better job of believing and supporting survivors, and guess what? We need to do a better job of holding rapists accountable. Yeah. Thank you. Let that stop me. And I actually met my best friend and the love of my life on an M16 range almost 20 years ago. And what Dima was saying earlier is so true, because my whole soul shattered the night that happened, but this man supported me and loved me through it, and I felt safer in his arms than I've felt my entire life. And we were able to raise two incredible human beings together and have this beautiful life in the military. So I went on, I became a captain in the Air Force. We're raising two fantastic children who love to give their mother a hard time. Do any of you guys have boys? Any of y'all the mother of boys? Okay. So y'all know how this works, right? They love you, but they love to make fun of you too. And in my case, they're both athletic, so unless it has something to do with sports, pretty much nothing that I do impresses them. Every once in a while, though, I'll have to throw it back at them because, since I did go on and, break all these records in the military, they allowed me to actually co-pilot an F-15 Strike Eagle, which is pretty cool. So sometimes when they're making fun of me about how uncoordinated I am, because I am, I'll remind them, I'm like, I'm sorry, how many of your friends' moms have flown an F-15 in an hour from Belle Chase to Miami and back because they were pulling G-force? Right, just me. Shut it down. Right? No, I'm kidding. I adore them. They're here today. That's why I'm making fun of them. But they are honestly the light in the darkest of my days, and they are the two human beings that I admire the most in this world. They're kind and smart and funny, and they happen to have these killer smiles courtesy of their mother. And no, they really are really good kids, but we did transition them a lot, and they've had to become very socially aware and resilient because we're part of this military family, and they're so sick of me saying that, but they know service before self, integrity in all we do, excellence in all we do, and integrity first. And that's kind of been our family mantra. So we're always involved in something on the outside. So when I chose to get out of the military, because I wanted to be there for them, I had this opportunity that came up through social media. So y'all really need to pay attention about those hashtags, because I was actually Facebook ranting about the injustices of the world when I landed this job at the USS Kidd Veterans Museum in Baton Rouge. Now, I love the Kidd, right? Because I've been there plenty of times, but it had never occurred to me to work at a museum. And they said, okay, well, listen, we need somebody to do communications and handle some administration. I'm like, Kate, got that. That's easy for me. I need some time off from being responsible for so many people's lives and oil spills and all these different things that have happened. And actually, now that I say the oil spill, during that time, I'll tell you about something that happened. When I was away once, and my son will never let me live this down, I missed his only 9th birthday, right? And this is a big deal to us in our family because I am one of those moms that smothers them in hugs and kisses on their birth minute. And so I missed it that year because I was away at school. I had a very good friend of mine, a Marine friend that I made while I was there, and we talked it out because she had 2 daughters close in age to my sons. And so I felt horrible about missing it. I made it up to him later on. But the year that we went into the oil spill here in Louisiana was the first time, because with military friends, we kind of all go all over the world, all over the country, different service. And we'd kind of fallen, away, and then we reconnected because we were both supposed to be deploying overseas. And so we were just catching up. Well, my commander pulled my orders because, of course, the oil spill kept me on Black Hawk for 3 months while we were doing, site assessments and press conferences with the governor and all these things that were happening super fast. Well, she ended up getting hit by an IED. And I ended up coming home. And I've never been able to understand why I got to come home to tuck my 2 kids into bed, and she never got to see her daughters for another birthday. And so I try to make the most out of every single day, not only for her, but for all the moms and dads who are putting their lives on the line for us that don't get to make it home to tuck their kids into bed. So I was glad and hurt, obviously, when I left the military because it'd become my extended family. But I joined the USS Kidd, and within 3 months of being there, their board asked me to consider becoming the next executive director because our director was going to be retiring. And so in December of 2013, by a unanimous vote, I became the first female veteran to take the helm of the USS Kidd in downtown Baton Rouge. Yay! It was such an exciting time. I was so pumped, and we had an incredible team, and I learned more about military history than I did there, but I will tell you that they were 3 of the hardest years of my life. Not because I didn't love the work, not because I didn't love the people. It started with little things that people would say. So I remember that one time during the 4th of July, I had this new reporter come up to me and put a microphone in my face, and she was like, okay, how does it feel to be the first Latina woman to be in charge of a $5 million organization in downtown Baton Rouge? And I just looked shell-shocked, right? I was like, what? It makes me sad. There's so many badass women out there. I just happen to be in the right place right now. So it had a lot of conversations talking. You know how anybody in PR will tell you, never read the comments. Never read the comments, and you'd think I'd learned that lesson, but I didn't. So I was like, okay, maybe people are super excited about the fact that a woman's running it. Nope. Do you know those little emoticons that you can put on people? You can send people emoticons all day long. So, and it was a girl who did this. She posted one of those squishy-eyed faces, right, with the ew. And she said, ew, her arms are so fat. And I'm like, the hell? I mean, I know I haven't been doing push-ups as much, but dang. So I actually didn't wear sleeveless dresses for a year after that because I was really bummed out. And then it kind of continued on. I was doing a live interview about an event that we had just started because we started things like yoga for veterans and First Free Sundays and art therapy classes for veterans suffering from PTSD and all these really cool things that hadn't been done before. But some people don't like change. And they didn't like me. And so they would say mean things. And so they would continue on. And I kept reading the comments because I never learned my lesson. But sometimes they would just outright say it. When you can go on Facebook Live and people can put all these comments on there about you and they're like, ew, she needs to stop blinking. Her eyes are too big. Okay. Can't really keep my eyes open the whole time. But then it moved on. I was at a luncheon and I was so exhausted. I was putting 10 to 12 hours days in, but this sweet little group asked me to go in, and I go out there and the lady comes up to me at the end and she was like, God, I hate you. You are too beautiful. It's a good thing you have cellulite because otherwise you'd just be too perfect. And I was like, oh my gosh, in a million years, I would never say that to another woman. I would never say that to another human being. But thanks a lot, because I'll probably never wear a swimsuit now. But it kept going on like that, and I was like, okay, some of it's superficial, it's nonsense, it's all the insecurities that people play into. You know all those things that you already think about yourself? Well, having somebody write them online and say them to your face kind of brings it to a whole new level. But the most horrifying comment that I got, and this was after building renovations, somebody actually posted online Who does this bitch think she is making all these changes? She deserves to be bent over and raped hard. She needs to be put in her place. So I was mad. I was livid. My children had to read those types of things about their mothers, so I came out swinging. I was like, forget y'all. I'm going to show you what it is that I am doing, why I deserve to be here, and why we're doing this. And so the kid, for the first time, saw the highest attendance that they have seen in a 25-year span. Their attendance increased by 500% in the 2 years that I was there. Thank you. Obviously, I didn't do that alone. I have an amazing family that always has my back, and I had an incredible crew that deserves all the credit for bringing those programs to fruition. But it kind of got to the point where I was like, okay, I don't want to extend my 3-year term. I'm ready to go somewhere else where my voice is going to be heard, because it's that whole thing that I've been telling you about, kind of always felt invisible, and I wasn't really feeling like my voice was being heard there. So in May of 2016, I landed my dream job, which is what I currently do, when Secretary Joey Strickland appointed me as the first female communications director and Women Veterans Outreach Coordinator for the Louisiana Department of Veterans Affairs. Thank you. I can't tell you how gratifying it is to do work that you love, especially when you understand, when you are the other half of a dual military couple and you're part of a military family and you understand the struggles of our veterans. There's over 374,000 of us in this state, and so it is a passion of mine. And so I hit the ground running. I now became the coordinator for military sexual trauma. I was now in charge of suicide well checks for all of my, co-workers that might be on the verge of burning out. I also started a Women Veterans Lunch and Learn series because guess what? Female veterans are committing suicide at a 30% higher rate than the male counterparts. So it's for us to start actually working on the issues that are affecting us. And then I also volunteered myself to start mentoring incarcerated women veterans so that we can make sure that they succeed when they get out. I was loving every minute of it. I had it all, right? And then my life fell apart on the home front. The man that I loved, that's always been by my side, started losing his damn mind. And nobody knew why. They kept saying, oh, it's PTSD. Oh, it's probably transitioning out of the military. He'd recently retired. But he started becoming more distant. And I couldn't find a way to reach him. Now, I'll tell you this about myself. On top of the gazillion things that I juggle, I volunteer as a counselor, so I have more tools in my toolkit than more people have in their lifetime. I am a substance abuse counselor. I'm a military sexual trauma counselor. I handle suicides, and I am also very involved in domestic violence cases, translating for people. So I know a lot about trauma. I'm good with crisis. I'm good with trauma. And I am very good at helping people that are in need. But for whatever reason, I could not reach my best friend. And I kept carrying this guilt on the inside. It was eating away at me. And it had gotten to the point where he had gotten so violent that I told him that if he didn't get help, he needed to get out. That was on a Friday night. Saturday night, the Louisiana flood happened. And we lost 70% of everything that we once owned. I'll tell you, it's heartbreaking on many levels because we bought this perfect house after Katrina, so we wouldn't have to go through that again. And this go around, I lost 57 pairs of vintage shoes, so I was devastated. It was very hard for me. But aside from that, 176,000 veterans were directly affected by the same flood. So now my brothers and sisters in arms needed me, right? So it was easy to put on a front and not worry about the impending demise of my marriage or what was going on with him, because I was putting in 10, 12-hour days. I can't tell you how many military families I counseled and helped get Military Family Assistance Fund emergency flood relief checks because people couldn't afford to eat. They didn't have anything, right? But on the home front, things were getting worse. It got to be to the point where I was scared. I was scared to come home because I was always having to walk on eggshells around someone that had always been my rock. So then I didn't have that safety net. So I would go to all these events and people were like, Alex. And I was there, but I wasn't there. I don't know if you guys have ever had this experience where you'll be in a room with hundreds of people and you feel like you are completely alone because nobody's really seeing you. They're seeing the front, but they're not seeing the pain that you're carrying around. So I had to make a very heartbreaking decision and ask him to move out. And a week from the day that I announced publicly that we were going to get a divorce, after talking to my kids and explaining to them that he really needed help, he fell at a doctor's office. And even though we had been telling the VA for almost 2 years that something was wrong with him, and I kept saying he's acting like someone with a traumatic brain injury, nobody listened to me, right? Because I'm not an MD. I'm just his wife. He fell, and they found at Our Lady of the Lake, thanks for their wonderful staff, they did an MRI and found a massive brain tumor. This black mass that was encompassing the whole top of his brain and crushing his frontal lobe. Now, I won't get into neurosurgery stuff because I'm not a neurosurgeon, but I will tell you that your front lobe is what basically controls your memory, your impulsivity, your aggression. All of the things that made my best friend go away and become a Hulk version of himself for the last 8 months, we finally had a reason for it. And he got a free helicopter ride that day down to Tulane, and within a couple of days, they had given him enough steroids to basically stabilize him. It took 8 hours for a team of neurosurgeons to take this black mass out of my best friend's brain and bring him back to me. And I say this because while we were there, we found out that several people in his unit have also had the same injuries. And so to me, it's a new passion, right? Because we're a military family. We're very resilient. We're pretty strong, you know. When others run from danger, we run towards it. That's what we do. We're warriors. But this tore us apart, and it shook me to my core, and it made me feel like the loneliest person in the world because I had no one. I am the caretaker. I am the one that cares for everybody else, and I didn't know how to ask anybody for help. And I felt broken. Luckily, I was able to take a quick break. I actually went to Puerto Rico for a week to try to decompress. And it was a really great trip, but the thing about being communications and working in crisis is that you always have to take your phone with you. So I had to deal with 3 crisis calls while I was there. And, you know, beautiful beaches, but people that are suicidal are talking to you, so it kind of changes the vibe a little bit. But I got home, and I had all these missed calls from my doctor. And my doctor finally is like, hey, listen, I need you to come in. It's time to go. You know that side stitch you think you have? It's not a side stitch. It's another tumor, and you need to go to oncology immediately. And I'm like, damn it. My life is starting to become a tragedy, right? Because this is ridiculous. Who the hell has this much stuff go wrong in an 8-month span? But cancer runs in my family. And even though I do not qualify for some of the treatments, or I'm not a good candidate for some of the treatment options that are available for me, cancer is not going to be the thing that's going to take me down, okay? With all the stuff that I've been through in my life, that's not going to be the thing. So if you, I wanted to share all of this with you, not because we're all besties. I mean, we can become if you want to. I'm pretty cool. But I want you to know this, okay? If I can get through the last 8 months of my life and keep fighting, and if I can continue to move forward and help all these people in the midst of the chaos and all the noise and the loneliness that was going on in my head, I want you to remember one thing from this. I see you in all of your perfect imperfections out there, and not only are you perfect the way you are, you matter to me, and I need you to keep on fighting. And it's okay to ugly cry with your best friend and eat Haagen-Dazs and watch Lifetime movies, do whatever you have to do for a day. And then you get back up and you keep fighting, right? Because you always keep moving forward. And if nothing else, I want my children to know that regardless of what the future holds, I went down swinging. And I love y'all. Have a good night.